Hello, beds, and welcome to the Weekly Hoopla, where I break down the need-to-know news in a busy world of the NBA. And boy, do I mean busy. Ooh, this rumor season's killing me, folks. But before I start, I just wanted to thank you all for watching. And of course, shamelessly to beg you to look at your subscribe buttons, look at the thumbs up, make sure you're getting them both over to us. We appreciate it very much. And of course, now that the corporate crap is done, let's get to the hoopla. Injuries, always the most important thing for us to talk about. Um, this week, kind of light on at least the superstar side of this and the severity side of this, so we're happy to report that. We're going to start in Portland with Shaedon Sharpe. Standout sophomore is going to miss 2 weeks with an abdominal strain. This isn't going to be the biggest deal in the world, obviously. We know where Portland's at. It's more of a negative for the highlight reels, if we're being honest. His development, for sure. The core of what they're doing in Portland, still a little in a funky place, especially right before the deadline, where you have a couple of guys there that could be moved. So just wanted to note that if you notice, the highlights from Portland aren't coming as big and as quickly in the recent weeks. That'll be why, is the playmaker won't be in action. Moving on to a team that does have serious contender status questions, but hopefuls. You got Ivica Zubac, who's going to be out for at least 4 weeks. I wouldn't even say at least 4 weeks. We're talking about 4 weeks until an evaluation period, all for a calf strain. This is kind of wild because the Clippers have had just consistent injuries to their big guys throughout the entire season for one way or another. They've got a nice little group together with all of them when they're healthy and full. A lot of optionality, even using Terrence Mann as a small ball five. That's why PJ Tucker, we'll talk about later, will be on the market. So the Clippers have a lot of fun options at that point, but it is still the biggest question. It's like, cool, you have a lot of optionality, but when you have Nikola, when you have AD, honestly, even getting to Giannis, you're getting to these monster guys who are some of our best players in basketball. And it's like, I respect the 4 guys. You have, 3 guys as the starters, and the potential of what Russell can do on the bench is very nice for this team. You have good shooters. You have a lot of good players on this roster. But at the end of the day, I still need to know that you can protect the rim and that you've got 48 minutes of what you need at the 5. And Ivica Zubac was a big part of that. And so for him to miss this large chunk of time, granted it is as Mason Plumlee comes back, I just really worry about what that does for the Clippers. But at the same time, it continues to test them in their weakest point all the way up until the playoffs. And I know that they can still make some moves, but ultimately you got to find that to be a little interesting there. You got to say, hey, is this an opportunity for them to get stronger, or is this just a consistent, are they this great group right now, and their critical flaw is just unbreakable for them, at least in the moment. Maybe it takes another off season to get this team quite perfect, but we'll talk about next season for the Clippers in full as we finish this podcast out. So Zach LaVine going to be our final out for the moment. Zach LaVine is going to have an ankle sprain that'll sideline him at least until the deadline. That doesn't really kill his tradability that much, but I think when you add it to the equation of what he's got with his cap, what he's got with who he is as a player established, you can always get better. We understand that these players sometimes, I think they take offense to these things, but it's just realistic at this point, especially with someone as far into their career as Zach LaVine. It really doesn't make sense for us to assume that he's going to go to the Lakers or the Sixers or the Heat and be this amazing defender now because he's playing with you. It's possible. It's not it wouldn't be the first time it's ever happened, but we can't just assume these things. That doesn't make any sense on our side of things as fans, as consumers of this product. So I think when you add all of it together with LaVine, it doesn't kill his tradability, but this does really feel like it's just, as we will get into later, it feels like this is the moment where Zach LaVine and the Bulls realize they're stuck with each other. We'll see. Let's get quickly through these injuries because we got so many damn rumors. We got everybody coming back. I added a couple of superstars who I didn't mention in the out because I've kind of mentioned Jimmy a little bit, but didn't mention both of these guys because we were sort of in in a weird period where I wasn't sure if this was load management or if it was actual injuries, but they both missed a little bit of time, so we will talk about it. Jimmy Butler, he's been back for 3 games since dealing with this lingering foot injury, but he missed the 7 prior to that. The Heat also haven't had the best week in the world, so little concern there. But again, you're talking about the Heat, where we're not super worried about what they're doing in the regular season, and honestly, at this point, feeling like they will have at least one roster move to make before the deadline, and so you kind of can tell that with the team where it's going. It kind of feels like it's something in the locker room is being felt. So either way, you're happy to see Jimmy getting back, get his rhythm back. Then that'll kind of help fix whatever, Band-Aid, whatever they have. They can make the trade, and then they can move forward as a playoff roster, a healthy playoff roster, exactly what no one wants to see out of them. And then to the other side of things, the other side of the bracket of the conferences here, you get the Western Conference's starting point guard potentially. Luka Doncic has missed 3 games in a row, or had missed 3 games in a row with an ankle sprain issue. Didn't really know how bad that would be. God love living next to Texas, where someone's going to rev their stupid ass engine up while you're trying to do your shit. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm not. Actually, that just sounds like some fucking construction. Welcome to my life. Either way, is it? We're just hanging out? Yeah, we're just convoy. Sorry, folks. Just convoy construction vehicles. That's my luck. Either way, Luka's going to be back. He's been back 3 games, missed 3 games. Now he's back for 1 game. It wasn't the best game in the world, but he came back. And then they had another one postponed. And boy, we will talk about that issue pretty quickly. But again, still getting couple more injuries fixed up and talked about and out of the way. Tyrese Haliburton's back. He is back for a first game after his team made a big move that we're definitely going to get into. Did take the L to a Portland Trailblazers team that you don't always want to take an L to, but hey, they're not as untalented as their record might appear. And he had a 21-17 night, so it wasn't the worst thing in the world for Haliburton. But he is back, and that's great for them. Obviously, they will be a big subject as we get into the meat of this podcast. Jay Crowder, that'll be the final injury we talk about. Came back from an adductor surgery. So this is sort of something that I think would probably hamper him quite a bit in a lot of ways. But they super duper need him. So it looks like they probably rushed him back a wee bit too soon. But either way, I guess he's just going to work it out on the court, which is not the worst situation either, as long as he's healthy enough to do so. Got dog walked by the Cavs in his first game back. I mean, they didn't have Giannis, and it was nasty. Just they're bad with Giannis defensively. Without him, it just becomes something completely worse. It becomes a damn near fucking lottery team, man. And so they got smashed by the Cavs. Again, Cavs playing great basketball right now. So, kind of just two things happening at once there. And it just looks worse than it probably is in totality. And then they got a nice little win over the Pistons yesterday during the day. Day games don't really count to me. I have a policy on that, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. But it's nice to see him back playing. They desperately need him in uniform. But as we move into the news and the rumors, we're also going to sort of mesh this with tiers. Last week, I kind of bumbled up all of the news breakers into their own categories and talked about what they had to say. And that was fine. I didn't hate it. I think it actually might have done some good for our SEO. So you never know. I might use that trick again in the comments. But for our purposes, for the entertainment purposes, for the talking purposes, I moved it to teams today. So we're going to kind of mesh tiers with this, except for we won't break down the tiers. I'll probably mention where I might have these teams as I get to them. But mostly this is just bundling up all the information that we're talking about with each team, and then kind of assigning it the rumors, assigning it a little bit of maybe some interesting talking points. We won't get to all the teams today. That could be a great thing for your team, especially like Denver, Boston. Won't talk about these guys exclusively because things are going well. They're not that interesting in the trade market. Obviously, it's always possible to make a deal, but they're not super duper interesting when it comes to these rumors. So some of those teams are just going to have to wait their appropriate term. But at the same time, is it that big a deal? It means your team's really good and on pace to win a championship or compete for one. So if you're a fan, just relax, kick back, and laugh at all these other teams just trying their ass off to get closer to your level. That's the way I look at it. And of course, we got to start with, sort of the most important teams here. I kind of have it layered a little bit, but mostly we're starting, I'm a journalist first. We're starting newsworthiness first. So unfortunately this week, the Golden State Warriors are going to have to be where we begin. And I don't mean to bury the lead here. We discussed this on the main pod as it happened right about an hour before we started recording. But for our purposes on this show, we're going to go ahead and do this in chronological order so that we can kind of historically document this week in Warriors basketball, because it's probably been one of the worst weeks in all of professional basketball. Let's just get started here. We start on Monday, MLK Day. I previewed this game. I said, hey, Draymond's coming back. I said, hey, they're playing a battered Grizzlies team. They got to win this game. So important they win this game. And they got killed. They just didn't. They got beat, man. They got beat. Draymond said individually our defense sucked. So in turn, our team defense sucked. I love the simple quotes. Those will always make me happy because it's just, it's really that simple. There's not a lot of continuity with this roster. It's a lot of different old and young, and we're trying to establish, what we're trying to defend, all these different things. We're trying to build legacy. Just too much going on in the locker room in Golden State right now, and it just becomes more obvious as the days go. Either way, obviously, we'll get to why that gets a little bit harder to deal with as we move forward. But we move into the next day where Shams talks about on his show, says exactly this quote: they've had players show their frustration publicly, privately, and there's been a lot behind the scenes. There's an understanding that changes for this team could happen. Funny enough, I don't even have them much rumored in our rumors. I mean, there's some of their players will be mentioned. A lot of the rumors this week were backing up Kuminga and Moody being unavailable, really kind of putting the onus back on the fact that Andrew Wiggins is pretty much the only way this team can move forward from that position, or from that angle, is he's the only piece they can really dangle and put out there correctly. So I guess you'll be interested to see what happens with that. But ultimately, this all came down to what started on Tuesday night, right? Tuesday night, we all get the news that their assistant coach, we're going to call him Decky, now that we understand is kind of the name that it's Dion Milovic. No, that doesn't feel right either. So Dion is basically Dion, like sort of like our American Dion, was how you pronounce the first name. And then Decky is most commonly how people knew him. And I guess I already tipped off this if you don't know the story. But we find out he's been hospitalized after a team dinner, having some sort of medical emergency at a team dinner. The NBA then announces that the game against Utah Wednesday night would be postponed. That started getting everyone's, heads a little bit, more questioning things. But hey, if someone's being critically hospitalized, of course, it makes sense, right? Not a big deal. Then San Francisco Chronicle reports that the team, that insiders close to the team says they're in prayer mode. All right, well, now we're getting into a much, much, much darker place. And of course, Wednesday, as I said, about an hour before we sat down to record, which is like 6:30 Central Time, it was official, and he had passed away. And so Decky, we talked about his legacy. We talked about how all that goes in the main pod. So I don't want to step on any of that. We've got a lot to get to here. Just wanted to sort of make sure that we talked about it in that sort of order. You go ahead and you just have to remember that I'm trying to assess where a basketball team is going into a playoff stretch, going into a trade deadline that matters a lot in this league. And it's tough because they have real problems, real structural problems on so many different levels. But then you throw something like this in, and it's such a crazy variable from a team building perspective, from a human perspective, that you just can't predict what comes next. They could either break historically, they could lose every game for the rest of their season. I don't think I could blame anyone for it. Or this could spark the change that they need internally to not have to make any moves and just give this group one more run together. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to get into it anymore just because of the respect for someone's life. Got a couple more notes here. But that's pretty much it on the Warriors right now. We will see the Warriors play again. I think on the 24th is the next game, as I said on the main pod, where you saw. I guess I stepped on the toes of the last note here, but we have the Mavericks. We're supposed to host them in Dallas Friday night, but that got postponed Thursday, the 18th. So we kind of guessed that on the main pod because I just kind of looked at the schedule and it was like, well, shit, if they just postpone these two games, you have basically a week off. And I mean, it's not a lot of time in the grieving process, but in this particular case, it's probably the best case scenario you're ever going to get. So we'll see what the Warriors kind of look like as a basketball team. I just wanted to leave off. Obviously, I think most people saw this, and it's a team we will mention a little bit later for obviously back to the basketball reasons. But the Toronto Raptors started their game off against the Heat by running what Coach Darko called Decky's play. That was a really awesome moment. They ended up, again, when it comes to sports, you never really know. Of course, the Heat are struggling a little bit right now anyway, but they got smashed in that game, and you almost wonder, was it just the ability for the moment to sort of weigh heavy enough on these guys, on the coaches, for them all to feel it, and then just have this game much more, just have that moment, that presence of mind in that game to play the way they did. In the Heat, obviously just sort of being victim of circumstance here, where you do have a Serbian player on the roster, but I don't know their relationship. You're talking about a very young player, Nikola Jovic. I don't know that they really would have crossed paths with Darko already, or with Decky already being over here as an assistant coach, as he's like kind of in the rankings of where they would have crossed paths. So I don't know historically on that one, but you just have this kind of interesting moment in time for these two teams, and the Toronto Raptors play a weird and interesting part in all of this for the Warriors nation to sort of move on in whatever way is humanly possible, So it's tough. We'll move into the Pacers here, because there's no good way to do it. Yes, the Pacers come next in the newsworthy category because, of course, they pull off the big trade of the year so far. We talked about it a little bit on the main pod, as well as this also, unfortunately, sort of covered up the news or sort of hit about the same time as the Decky news was official. So kind of an unfortunate time in recording history there for that one. But this is how life works. We'll start off by saying that early last week, Shams started reporting that the Pacers felt really good about signing Pascal Siakam. That makes a ton of sense. Their cap room, whatever, right? Then Jake Fisher and others started to report, I believe on Wednesday or Tuesday night or something, that there was a very, very, very good chance that this team could end up making a deal, right? These two teams, the Pacers and the Raptors, were locked in on talks that this looked like the best possible situation. But it kind of died out. Didn't really know it was going to come from. And then out of the sky, boom, a trade. A wild trade appears. Pascal Siakam is now an Indiana Pacer. The most notable part of this story is probably that the Pacers ended up holding up onto all of their young talent. That's probably one of the best things that you could get out of it. Jarish Walker, Benedict Mathurin, even Andrew Nembhard. Just having some young, controllable assets, I think, on the roster still with your established Miles Turner, Haliburton, and Pascal kind of spearheaded at the top here. I think that works. I think it's a good group to move forward with. I think it's a very competitive group to move forward with. Has some issues potentially, but at least to start this part of the process, I like where it could go. Pascal's agent on the record said that he believes that both parties are going to be very optimistic and positive about doing a long-term extension. So you love that. They have his bird rights, and they'll probably make a pretty easy deal to complete when it comes to free agency. all he's got to do is mesh with the roster, be healthy, and hopefully all of that good stuff goes well. And if it does, there's really no reason for him not to sign a long-term extension in Indiana. And I think that puts Indiana in a great position. They did give up some stuff. We'll talk about with the next team that ended up receiving that stuff. But at this point, you got to enjoy the future of the Indiana Pacers right now. And the fact that a great basketball state has got another great basketball team to root for. The Pacers are good once a decade, seems like. So hasn't been the worst thing in the world for that city, but you do want to make sure that they kind of get that. So I guess I just picked fucking construction hauling day to do this. What a fucking life. Anyway. They're not afraid to do it again, the Pacers are. So they still have Buddy Hield, who doesn't feel like he's at all in their long-term plans. And I think they could still get this team a little bit closer even this season. It's a pretty decent-sized contract. They've got other pieces that I think could work. I'm really excited. I think that I would, if I was the Pacers, I would definitely want to push it further a little bit more. We do have a weird cap rules. We have different cap restrictions. And I don't know that even I have too much of an understanding of all of the repercussions of being too crazy in this moment. But I'm still really excited about it, man. I really think that this could be a fun team to even watch as we finish the deadline stuff. As we have like 2 weeks left in the deadline news, they could be back in the market again. And I think that when I get to doing my tiers, it's going to be interesting where I have them. I had them firmly set as a mid team because I felt like a track meet team. But at this point, maybe not. Or maybe there's a better track meet team now. Sorry, Pacers fans. I don't know. Just being a pessimist. All right. The Toronto Raptors, the team that received the stuff for giving up the thing. Pascal Siakam, they had a nice little farewell. Everything was for him. He did for them. They did for him. Obviously, that's probably one of at least the top 5 players in Raptors history, had part of the title winning team. So you want to make sure you got a great package back, right? Of course, he's a free agent. Of course, now we know that Michael Grange of Sportsnet in Toronto says that the team was never going to supermax him. So you kind of see where all the reporting now makes a lot of sense in this situation, where they just had to move on. So whatever you get is pretty much good, right? Well, they end up getting a nice haul. I know some people are pessimistic about it, but I think this is a decent haul given the situation. First, Jordan Nwora, no disrespect at all. Jordan Nwora is a decent NBA player, good value. I think if he went overseas, he would be like a super stud. So it's just one of those things where he's a great value player to have on the Raptors. I don't know what they'll do long term with him, but I'm sure he'll stay in the NBA for quite a bit, given what he can do in his size. And then Bruce Brown is the biggest, current player. I think that they've gotten a part of this. You're going to have an interesting time. He's already having a little fun playing with them at the moment, but he's kind of clearly waiting for the next team to go to, and we'll get to that in a second. But you like what Bruce Brown is as an asset. And then you get 3 firsts. You get a 26th first that I think is a top 5 protected or so pick. That's fine. That sounds like it could end up working out really well. Who knows what could happen 2 years from now with the Pacers. So maybe that one works. Now, the 2 picks you get this year, they're not awesome. They're probably a Clippers or a Thunder pick, probably a Clippers pick. And then you have a Pacers pick that you just made super valuable because you traded them Pascal Siakam without really giving up too much. So I would imagine you're probably not going to get the greatest there, but that helps you with the asset pool. I don't hate it if you're creative with it. You don't have to hoard picks necessarily like the Thunder, but I mean, even them, they can't really hate what they've done, even if the hoarding picks thing has been weird. They also got Kyra Lewis out of the deal. That one's more of a weird background money move situation where he came in through the Pelicans. Doesn't really matter. I just want to see this guy get a little bit of actual run at the NBA level. Just hasn't worked out in New Orleans. His size has just sort of not been compatible with what they put out on the court. And so I don't think that he's really gotten a fair shake at this. He's a lightning fast point guard, so I would love to see him at least get a bit of a chance before he's just bound to the G League, bound to looking over at the foreign side of the game. Although with someone as fast as he is, I don't think that's a bad move either, because you could easily go over there and start being the MVP with the speed he's got. But moving back over to Bruce Brown, Bruce Brown is going to be a great trade candidate moving forward. There's going to be plenty of talk about him as we get into some of the other teams that could be in the market. Woj saying that that's probably one of the stronger markets because he's got an obtainable contract and flexibility, and you probably don't have to give up quite as much as some of these other guys that are on the market. So actually, I think you only need to match about $15 million on the salary side of it. So really not a hard contract to trade for and a very valuable player. Just depends on what the price tag is going to be. Masai Ujiri, the team president, sort of foreshadowed that there's going to be more changes prior to the deadline with the Raptors, most likely. You've got a couple of interesting quotes here. He said, "We tried to give this team all of the time we could." I think that's a fair statement to say, maybe a little longer than you should have, but I think in all retrospect, it can't be too nitpicky about how they handled it now that we've gotten to this conclusion. And then an interesting quote, of course, last year they traded a first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl, thinking that they just needed the rim protection to fix that 6'8", lineup, the all 6'8" lineup. And the reality is you also need shooting, and they didn't have that. And so he said, "I'm not going to sit here and cry over spilled milk. If it was a mistake, it was a mistake, but it was a good value for us." Essentially talking about starting centers, they're going rate, blah, 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 right? I'm fine with all that. I just thought the honesty was really interesting. It was clearly a team president opening up and saying, "Hey, look, I tried to remake this team, the title winner, into something without breaking it up, and it broke up anyway. So this is just the game. We've got this really awesome player, Scotty Barnes, and we've got a bunch of interesting young talent and assets moving forward, and I don't know what else I can give you guys. Like, it was either this or wait and shit for another year or two." And then the final note on this, very solemn note, Christian Coloco was waived by the team in order to finalize this deal. That's a big note because his career is likely in jeopardy over a blood clot issue. Basically, at this point, I think he'll just sort of take the year off, and then you deal with the medical side of this, and then probably in the off season at some point we'll find out what kind of future he could have in the NBA. The good news is if he can get this figured out, I do think he's a rotation player for plenty of teams and probably a fringe NBA guy that could make plenty of money and be on plenty of rosters for a good while. So hopefully the medicals can clear up on him and get back to playing basketball at the highest level next year. All right, let's move over to the New York Knicks, where we're going to continue to stay heavy because, this story isn't light. But I don't want to bury it, even though there's not a lot of substance to it either at the moment. But the guy who owns the New York Knicks, James Dolan, has been alleged to have committed a quite serious crime. I'm not going to kind of get into that because I don't want that in our SEO. But very serious allegation, very above my pay grade to tell you where all of that's at. There really isn't any more to report about the allegation, except for that it's been formally made against him, and it involves someone who I definitely don't want in our SEO algorithm, so I'm definitely not saying that name. And it is going to be in a legal cloud. I'm sure James Dolan has very, 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 very good lawyers. So I don't know. I will pay attention. I know there's plenty of people who have had James Dolan on a hit list of potential people that they want sports team owners that people want to have canceled. We've had quite a good run. You had Sterling, you had Sarver, you had there's some stuff in the NFL. We have obviously Snyder, but then there was some other ones too, right? In the last decade or so. So it's been nice. It's been nice to sort of have some of these rich assholes get their comeuppance, right? I'm with you. I'm team fuck the rich guys too. In fact, if there's anyone who wants to release some gnarly tape on the guy who owns that star, I'm just saying. Anyway, I'll keep my eye on it. Sorry, this is a very serious allegation. Laughter is a coping mechanism. Fred Katz reported that the team is going to be on the market for another star to add to the core, but that realistically they don't believe this is going to happen until the offseason. Couldn't agree more. Not much else to say about that. The market is an interesting one. I don't know that LaVine, Murray, upper echelon of talent right now, I don't think there's the guy they want. Like, they want to see one of these quality teams implode and then see who wants to jump ship. Smart move for me. Cats also reported that Quentin Grimes, now sort of out of favor in New York, is probably someone that people are going to look to add. So then now you have a chance for the Knicks to add more assets into this, or to obtain a player that they think is a little bit higher, a higher graded version of Quentin Grimes. Fucking engine braking, bro. So yeah, great talent in the Knicks with Quentin Grimes. He just doesn't fit Thibs' market, doesn't fit the grinder role probably better. Just being somebody's, solid rotational guard, combo guard. Good defender at times. It seems like had high upsides on that side, but hasn't had the consistency. Ian Begley mentioned the Hawks, the Grizz, the Jazz, and the Rockets as being interested. All of those teams sort of make sense in what they would need. They also all make sense in sort of what kind of asset the Knicks would want back for them. So that's just an interesting couple to look at. Grimes also played for the Houston Cougars in college, so never know. That's a brand that loves each other a lot. In fact, the team literally just stole the jerseys this year, so you never know. They basically it's Hakeem Olajuwon basically just as one person just handles it all himself. Just no bad blood between. He is the synergy. And then no, I will not be commenting on Fred Katz's other tweet. I am going to keep this show professional. It's why I didn't mention the man who's mentioned in the lawsuit that I mentioned earlier. I am going to try our hardest to do this. I can't fix construction trucks driving around, but I can fix what I comment on. And if you want to see the screenshot, or if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can reach out to me personally. The game is the game, though, folks. We're not Fred Katz. Proofread your tweets. And never mind. We're not going to keep going. I think Bruce Brown starts to become one of the bigger potential candidates for the New York Knicks. The cost is right, keeps them with the optionality to pursue a bigger star in the offseason. It sort of fits the rumors that they want a ball handler or another big man to add to their team. The big man probably a little on the back burner because there's still hope for the Mitchell Robinson return. But Bruce Brown would fit sort of both of those needs in a way. I think that it's an interesting one to look at. And then last night, after the two teams played, Bruce Brown said that he actually considered the Knicks heavily. He loves Tom Thibodeau, thinks he's perfect for Thibs' system. Spoke very openly about the potential of being a New York Knicks. So got to be an interesting one to look for. Going to have my Rick from Pawn Stars moment here and give you the best offer that the Knicks are allegedly throwing out there, which would be Evan Fournier, which is a nice salary, but not, I don't think, an NBA player anymore. Quentin Grimes, solid player, solid salary. And then whatever picks, right? And the picks can be great with the Knicks, or the picks can be mediocre. They've got quite a big chest to pick from. So that's kind of all over the place. And that's also why they're being linked to more realistic options like Terry Rozier, Malcolm Brogdon, and their old friend Alec Burks. Because what else, you want to keep that optionality. You want to have an upgrade in the interim. You're probably going to, and you don't want to spend a lot. It's just, this is what it's going to be. And finally, Mark Stein talked about how Jordan Clarkson's on their radar. We talked about Quentin Grimes was on the radar of the Jazz. That's kind of a perfect little swap there, not necessarily contractually, but probably not super far off of it, probably very doable. And I think it's a reasonable addition for what they would need. A little bit of scoring in the tough moments on the bench. I think that's plenty good. I think it's a great value contract. They've got the defensive ability to hide Jordan when he's not at his best on that end. So I think it's a good pick if they end up doing that. But that's the last one rumor for them. We'll get into now our teams that are just sort of going to be the most rumored in general here. That's sort of the part of where we're at in this whole thing. So the Atlanta Hawks, definitely going to be our most rumored team. I think DeJounte Murray's at the top of the rumor rankings now that Pascal's been traded. Kevin O'Connor says the Hawks want 2 first-round picks to sort of basically reset from the picks they gave San Antonio to get DeJounte. Mark Spears only called this being an exploratory phase, so maybe that's a hint that that teams are far apart on where they actually believe his value is. And that will be interesting to follow as we go. Ian Begley also talked about how the Nets and the Hawks had a conversation about Dinwiddie for Murray, which I'm guessing the Nets would be giving up quite a bit, but we talked about the potential of DeJounte Murray going to Brooklyn earlier, so there's certainly nothing impossible on the table here. And honestly, as I finish up what we're talking about with Atlanta, because there's a lot of rumors that it's all in one guy, and they're all sort of New York, Miami. We even have wild Detroit. You have your obligatory Lakers rumors. All of these things, right? I just wanted to encapsulate what this great trade run this last week has been for DeJounte as these rumors are heating up, as he's now the number one trade candidate. You get him hitting a game winner against the Orlando Magic. And then the next day, we find out that from Michael Scotto with Hoopside, love Hoopside, that the Hawks will only work with the Lakers on this deal if they find the third team for D'Angelo Russell. So now, boom, right back onto the trade markets, the Lakers trade. So it's almost obligatory for SEO purposes. I get it. But it's still a trade rumor nonetheless. And then the next day, boom, game winner over the Heat after saying he has no comment on his preferred trade destination. And I don't know if the internet was fucking with me or not, but I saw a screenshot of him on IG posting the Heat jerseys retired, and I just love the propaganda regardless if it was true or not. And it'll be interesting. I think for the Hawks, they kind of have to move on from this experiment. It's been a little too honest about this not working for them, even though it hasn't always been a negative from his side. It just feels like maybe this was the wrong move to do here. I guess I'm just interested to see where they end up going from here. What does this team end up being? I don't know that we have a ton of answers on this. Like, we know that they're good at selling. We know that they're good to sell. I guess I don't know if they're good at it yet. Yeah, I mean, at this point, a part of me wanted DeJounte traded for the juiciness, for the potential that he could add for some of these other teams. Another part of me is kind of like, is the market going to be there to recoup? Or are you just going to wait till this? Some part of me wonders if this isn't going to be a put it off till the free agency period. But could be wrong. Could be wrong. It's a good contract value. It's just the price, I think, is going to end up being something people are worried about. There's fit and choose too with some of these teams. Either way. And then we're going to go ahead and lump our drama kings together here. That's the Chicago Bulls and yes, the Los Angeles Lakers. But first, Lakers, please relax. It's time for the Bulls. No, we weren't making any widows cry this week, but I'm sure plenty of fans were. You have LaVine saying, hey, it's just another day at the office when he's asked about the potential being traded. Of course, we talked about his injury already. Then you have DeMar DeRozan. I don't sit up here refreshing apps in the morning to see what's what with rumors or anything. Fair. I mean, I would definitely not do that if I played in the NBA, no matter if I was on a team like San Antonio that doesn't like to make the moves in season. I'd still just not do that. But it sounds like a team that is super duper excited about still answering these questions that had started for them in particular almost the moment this season began. We've been talking about the Bulls trade rumors since the second week of the season. That's how long this has been going on. Maybe third week of the season. It's just, and the worst part is it looks like even further, like we're even further away from either DeRozan or LaVine being moved for this reimagined version of the Bulls that just doesn't seem to exist. Part of that, as Sam Vecini and Joe Cowley both affirmed, is that Alex Caruso's price tag is astronomical. So he's basically untouchable. Your best asset is basically untouchable because you just don't have a reasonable price tag on him, most likely. And that's fine. I don't really hate it. But here you get to Joe Cowley further with his report and talks about how the Bulls VP of the basketball ops, Arturas Karnisovas, continued to be focused on a future where the Zach LaVine deal nets him the remixed roster in the interim that saves the day and gives the Bulls something to build in the future. And on the one hand, I completely agree. I think that's the right way to handle it. And I've said that a bunch of times on the hoopla. But at the same time, it's crazy, 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 crazy for them to be this unrealistic about the price tag of LaVine. He's worth it. Who he is, what he's worth, it's just wild. And I think they want to keep DeRozan. So it's just one of those things where I don't know how to fix a team that doesn't necessarily want to fix itself because the guy in charge, I just don't know. I just don't know. Okay. And look, as far as the drama goes, there could be other guys move. There could be maybe they cash in on Kobe White and Pat Will having better seasons this year. There's plenty of paths for them to take. We just know that they're kind of also stuck with this group in a lot of ways too. So it's an interesting one, but it's wild to think that they're actually just going to potentially keep this roster past the deadline. That's what it looks like. So moving into the next drama king and probably the ones that were always likely to take over the drama king title this year, the Los Angeles Lakers. Sorry, folks, it's not about SEO this time. This is just actually how messy the Lakers are. We got plenty to get into, so let me just start off with a couple of things this week. We start our week in Los Angeles Lakerland with Jared Vanderbilt giving an interview where he says, hey, this team, as currently constructed, can fix it, can win. Then you pair that with the optics of LeBron James casually sitting, I believe, pregame on the Los Angeles Lakers bench, getting his mind right, getting ready, when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a fan comes up to him. We'll call him a fan, random person, comes up to LeBron James, puts both hands on his shoulders, and is like talking to him either in the quickest business pitch in the boldest business pitch in the world, or, bro, I love you. You mean everything to me kind of moment. Completely wild. Yes, the Lakers now, or the Staples Center now has to have a meeting about security. But I'm just, the optics of the things at Lakerland, and trust me, we will get to this Battle of LA as we finish this podcast up. It'll be one of the bigger parts of the finish to this podcast. But just been an incredible situation in those two things, right? That's just one day of this week for the Los Angeles Lakers. Because then the next day, we get a ESPN piece from their biggest, ESPN's biggest Laker fan, Ramona Shelburne. And I don't mean that just disrespectfully. It's just very true. And this comes after a promising win over the Thunder, the same game where LeBron had the interaction with the fan. How Ramona is now reporting that the LeBron and the Lakers were the ones who took themselves out of the Kyrie Irving market, both in the trade conversations prior to him being a Maverick and in this free agency, which is why the Mavericks were so easily with such an easy agreement came with the Dallas Mavericks and Kyrie Irving. Seems like from what she was talking about, the specter of Russell Westbrook lingers very heavy. A deal that they didn't give up the craziest amount of assets for, but they gave up so much cap issue, so much cap fit, and then still had so many issues and holes to fill with Russ on the roster. They felt similarly with the Kyrie Irving thing, and it's an interesting time to drop that. And I'm not going to play who should have done whatever. Obviously, Kyrie has played above most people's expectations this season. Getting those two back together again would have been cool, but at the same time, this is what the Lakers get. This is what has been a lot of the LeBron James era. I don't know who you want to blame it on, him, the roster, the owner, whoever. This team has been wildly inconsistent and has made crazy moves, and then use those crazy moves as excuses not to make reasonable moves. And it's just an interesting one. And of course, I think the same day, Brian Windhorst gets on the Hoop Collective. Brian Windhorst got to drop the Lakers stuff. He gets it, SEO. Says Bron is playing next year. Drops that. Says he believes firmly LeBron James won't retire. But he doesn't know where. He mentions the player option. And then I'm mentioning that LeBron James Jr., Bronny, is starting to look very much like he'll be drafted. Where is still up for debate. But it looks like somewhere between 1 through 60. Of course, I don't know whose picks have been taken away, so I don't know how many picks are actually in this next draft. But 1 through 60, he's going somewhere. If not, he's one of the biggest free agents in the rookie free agent class. And guys have been rookie free agent successes in the NBA for a few seasons now. So the likelihood of Bronny being in the NBA next year is highly, highly likely. It's really just now the medical stuff that we've already seemingly gotten past, seemingly. And then of course Wendy did say Jamal Murray might be worth it, even if the fit is a little iffy. The contract and the defensive upgrade from D'Lo and Reeves kind of enough to offset that. It's the contract's good. The iffiness is the fit. So I don't see why the Lakers would be against DeJounte Murray, other than the fact that it will cost them a lot more. And getting a third team to take D'Angelo Russell can get very interesting. And of course, he had to put out now that Wendy put out those rumors, you get a successful team, it looks like. You get Darvin Ham, Anthony Davis, LeBron James starting to gush about D'Angelo Russell. Then you get the Lakers throttling the Mavs on national television. And then you have a quote from LeBron James that was quite passed around this week. I don't play fantasy basketball with my teammates. It's too disrespectful to be thinking about what we need and what we don't have. I don't do that to my teammates. I don't do that to my teammates. I love LeBron James. He's one of my favorite persons to have ever existed. This is an incredible lie. Incredible. Like, there's no way that through this many years of basketball that you had this much roster change this frequently, and you expect me to believe that, man. But I love it. I love the commitment to the bit. And I love that. And this is why I've always said he wants to be a Laker forever, because like, where else do you get away with it? He can plead plausible deniability because the Laker rumors have to exist. Even when the Lakers suck, they have to exist. It's an SEO thing. They have to be a part of the conversation. So in a way, he can always just be like, oh, everyone's talking about the Lakers. I didn't do it. It's just Lakers. It's just Lakers, man. And of course, the next day, Colin Sexton and Tyus Jones rumors started ringing in the ears of Laker fans from Dave McMenamin. ESPN's one of their main guys on the Laker beat, on the LA beat entirely, I think, but the Laker beat exactly. I don't remember. I think he's Laker exactly. They've got another guy for the Clippers. Either way, Jovan Buddha, who does follow the Lakers specifically for The Athletic, Buha, I said Buddha, but Buha, Jovan Buha, not Buddha, reaffirmed that Reeves is basically untouchable, which just blows my mind. Of all the players that you would think, KCP not being untouchable, but Reeves being, I'm just confused by some of the logic here. Again, as I said, consistently with this Los Angeles Lakers team, with the LeBron James era, it's still very confusing. He also said that in that report that Bruce Brown intrigues them pretty well, and that kind of is an interesting one, because I think D'Angelo Russell to Toronto could make some sense. Kind of could make some sense. I think they have at least enough guard need right now that they could take the flyer on him if they need to facilitate a deal that brings them in something they want more. But it is very interesting because I don't know. I keep seeing Jalen Hood-Schifino mentioned in these trades, and I'm like, okay, but what do we think Jalen Hood-Schifino is? Because he hasn't looked like much in his limited time. Is Max Christie a better? You know what I mean? I just don't know what the Lakers' other stuff is without giving up the few picks they still have. And they have picks that open up more in the offseason. So if they really want to entice LeBron to stay for a final couple years or whatever, they can get Bronny, and they can probably add a decent piece to him and Davis. So it's just an interesting one. All of that to say, this culminates in them getting them pissing themselves on national television because they were the team that got bumped for the Mavs Warriors game that was postponed, of course. And that's why the danger zone is hard to get out of. I'm not doing tiers, but the Lakers would not be out. And James Worthy, historically one of the greatest Los Angeles Lakers of all time, noted that he says it's blatantly obvious that they don't get up for certain opponents. Austin Reeves then said after the loss to the Nets that body language is the root of all their problems, something that's been unfortunately very consistent with LeBron James teams over his career. And Nick Claxton, the Nets starting center, who could be in trade talks, although it doesn't seem like he's rumored at all. So I guess maybe that's a tip that they won't. he said it was obvious the Lakers came out flat after halftime and they were complaining so much that they just decided, all right, well, if y'all are going to do this, we'll just win the game. So I respect the fuck out of that. And that's why I remind all these guys, all of you guys watching, your team's screwing you if they're running the rumor mill like 2K. It's an unhealthy formula. I get it. It's a necessary evil when it comes to basketball, especially. Transactions are a part of this beast, but we use it as an excuse too much. Like, we're building roster continuity. We're building team chemistry to perform something that is difficult. You heard my quote with Draymond earlier. Individual defense leads to team defense. That is an important concept for basketball in every level. To constantly be messing with people's heads about where they're going to live and where they're going to play in the future. Constantly. You bring them in and then you immediately or end up re-signing them to be, in D'Angelo Russell's case, to be a trade piece, and that's about it. And I get that maybe the business is the business, and D'Angelo needs to understand that too to some extent, but it's just, this is not a way that you want to treat people and have success. I think that that's a big part of the legacy of what the Nuggets are right now. Moving over into the Miami Heat, talking about a team that actually has been taking a very patient approach to winning the title. Miami Herald says they won't be aggressive in DeJounte Murray's sweepstakes, feels very consistent with their behavior. Jake Fisher reported that Terry Rozier is very open to the idea of being the guy they pick. That's a more discount offer. Rick from Pawn Stars coming in. Best I can do is Lowry, Jovic in a couple of seconds. That's probably the offer that they're realistically putting out there. And I give the Lakers and the bullshit for being too crazy with all the rumors, but you can be too conservative too. If I'm the Heat, I'm going very aggressively on DeJounte Murray to capitalize on what I have right now. But that's not necessarily their nature. They want guys to kind of fall in their lap a little bit, and I get that because it's Miami, but it's a dangerous game. And Chris Haynes mentioned that they'll be active. Did mention Spencer Dinwiddie as well, which is another a very Miami Heat way to get a win now upgrade potentially. Even though we'll talk about Dinwiddie in a second, potentially, and not have to give up too much other than, roster cap space, right? And his team, the Brooklyn Nets, who we'll move on to now, says Sam Vecini admits that most teams are confused about what the Nets are, if they're buyers or sellers. Then Wendy calls them actual potential buyers and says that the DeJounte Murray sweepstakes is actually pretty likely in their situation, that they don't really want to bottom out because they don't have a lot of the reason to. And I don't hate that with their predicament. I just don't know what they also could offer. Is Ben Simmons' contract attractive enough to Atlanta to take with other stuff in order to facilitate this deal? That's where I have a lot of question there. What part of that do they get enticed on that Brooklyn still really has? They have some picks, but they don't feel like sexy enough picks to move forward. Then Zach Lowe had a really interesting point about Spencer Dinwiddie, who had been one of the worst shooters in basketball. Said he almost looked like he was on strike, like he didn't want to play. That could also be a big part of what the Nets' downfall's been. But then he ends up coming out and killing the Lakers, which is amazing and hilarious. And because obviously we follow the hoopla, the Lakers were complaining about how even the worst guys in the league shoot like Steph Curry against them, and literally the worst guy in the league at shooting shot like Steph Curry against them. So just a funny point there. Dorian Finney-Smith admitted that he understands rumors and that he's the most likely guy gone from the core. Nets Daily, take that forever you want. No offense to those guys. Said that Dorian Finney-Smith could cost up to 2 first-round picks, to which now I really worry about how desperate you are, Brooklyn. If that's true, that's just an outstanding. Like, even if you're talking about, like, the Nuggets giving you 2 first-round picks, like, that's kind of wild for Dorian Finney-Smith, even if it is too late 20s. Either way, the Washington Wizards, we'll move on to some of the teams that we are frankly, they're bad, and we're trying to see if they're going to give up any of their players. Sam Vecini says the price for Kyle Kuzma is 2 firsts or something equivalent. I don't really know exactly what that's a very open-ended thing to say, but either way. Then Michael Scotto says the teams are only doing exploratory work on Kyle Kuzma, and there's not really a team hell-bent on Kyle Kuzma. I think that's consistent. People don't exactly want to give up the farm for Kyle Kuzma. And I think the Wizards are right for having a high price tag because they're in rebuild mode. But at the same time, remember that it's Kyle Kuzma and that he's a really talented offensive player, but he's got a lot of frustrating aspects about his game, and his contract isn't exactly super duper cheap. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not super duper cheap. So let's just be honest about who needs him, who could use him, and what that would actually cost. And really, I think Tyus Jones is going to be the guy that could actually get a decent price tag for reasonably, because that's a point guard, starting level point guard that can actually help some of these teams. In fact, I think there's plenty. I think the Heat, the Lakers, the Sixers, I think plenty of teams could be looking at him. Even the Knicks, maybe to some extent, look at him and just say, all right, this gives us the upgrade at the ball handling position we need. And doesn't cost us a lot, salary or picks. Let's do it. Charlotte Hornets. Brian Windhorst says they're a mystery to most of the executives, and boy, they're a mystery to most of us as well. Jake Fisher also mentioned that Gordon Hayward could be bought out, and the teams are more or less banking on that option rather than trading for him in his final the last year of his contract, because he does have $30 million owed to him. That could be the biggest buyout name ever. Don't want to put that much pressure on an older Gordon Hayward, but if you could just add Gordon Hayward for the vet minimum or whatever, going into the stretch run of this season, what if it's Boston? He just goes to Boston. There's just so many funny ways. He goes to fucking Denver, you know what I mean? Like, it just would be hilarious to see Gordon Hayward just tip the scales like that, because that would be just an incredibly high-level player to have coming off your bench, or even just filling out a auxiliary role in the starting unit. Blazers made a lot of news this week. Jeremy Grant not being shopped around seriously. He says, I'm cool here. I say you're also paid there. So I get it. I don't think Jeremy Grant's a very tradable contract at the moment. And I think that at this point, while people are a little scared about how they're going to build their caps in the future, I don't know that they're wanting to take on his money and give up assets, which is probably what you have to do. So, don't see that being a part of the equation. Of course, there was a big DeAndre Ayton story that came out where he couldn't make a game due to the ice on the ground, and a bunch of talking heads started using that against him, mostly just because it's DeAndre Ayton. And no offense, Ayton, but you've opened yourself up to this for the past. I'm also a Texan. I have no room to talk. If any ice gets put on the ground, we're not driving anywhere. I don't have a big truck. You heard me complaining about big trucks. I don't like them. And then the Blazers reported that a Blazers reporter, sideline reporter that actually lived in the neighborhood, made it to the arena. So that is funny. I'm not going to lie. I saw videos of Portland. There's no way I would have been getting out there. He alleged that he tried. I don't care. I'm not putting it against him. But it is interesting, and it's really just coming because he's missed so much time with what issues that, just little things. It's the team just he hasn't played a lot this season, and it's become a very confusing thing, I'm sure, for fans as well. So the media naturally is going to ask, and that's where we are. Talking heads are naturally going to be weird and just take what little context they want and run with it. Malcolm Brogdon's probably the only likely guy moved out of this pool. Chauncey Billups called him their voice and the leader. When he talks, you listen. And he mentioned how tough of a spot it was here. Said he really isn't being used to the max capacity. And then Brogdon called it a very gratifying place where his voice and leadership is valued. But I think also in some ways was like, I'd still like to play for something if you guys want to make a little trade. He's been mostly healthy this season as well. A little bit of issues there, but, mostly good. So I think that you would almost likely see some team take a shot on Brogdon, given everything else he adds, just not trying to spend too much because the injury history is just too relevant with him. Houston Rockets, not much to say here, just a couple of notes that they look like they might be the team that could take Harrison Barnes off Sacramento's hands. I don't know exactly what Sacramento would want back, but I just found that interesting because they are wanting to double down on their vets around their young guys thing, and I don't hate it, especially because I think Alperen Sengun is really the guy to build around, and they've got talented young guys to do it with. Maybe there's one particularly talented young guy that they've got a hard decision on, but otherwise it looks good. So I like it there. And then I just thought this quote was cool from Alpi. If you want to be an all-star and the other shit, you got to do everything. And that quote made me happy. That made me very happy because I love these foreign guys coming in, playing their little brand of basketball, but they play shit defense and then they act like it's our fault for it. That pisses me off. So I like that this new brand is like, no, I have respect. I'm going to do the little things defensively. If Joker can do it, I can do it. Fuck yeah. New Orleans. Not a ton going on here, honestly. This one just has a couple of notes that are important for the future of the Pelicans. Brandon Ingram will be a free agent in 2025. Brian Windhorst suggested that the Pelicans, this could be the first real hard decision for the Pelicans. I don't think it will be. In fact, we ended up getting some reporting that Herb Jones could be the most likely guy gone because they love Brandon, they love Zion, obviously, and they love Trey Murphy's ability. And essentially, if you come down to Herb Jones or Trey Murphy, I think that's an interesting one that they would choose. They did, I think, dump Kyra Lewis this year as mostly a move to save money, which started causing some of the NBA execs to anonymously start telling their reporter friends that maybe the Big Easy was going to keep the team under the cap for the future. And while that might be true, we don't know. I just wanted to say, hey, also, don't forget that the logic kind of says that this would be a good time to go under the cap because you're not, or under that particular tax, because at the same time, like, this team isn't going to do anything deep this year. I think you want to get to the playoffs, you want to punch somebody in the mouth, but this team isn't going to win a title this year. You know that. That's not a weird thing to say. So save the money this year if it's really a problem, and understand that the future you can't do that anymore. You have to pay the piper now. Like, now is the time that we have the talent. Now we have to pay for it. Utah Jazz, super short here. Woj says the Jazz are building around Lauri Markkanen. That backs up some of the rumors last week about him being basically untouchable. And to all of that, I say duh. I mean, duh. Cavs also doing pretty well for themselves. You have Mark Stein suggesting that they can make a wing addition here with Royce O'Neal and DeAndre Hunter sort of being the two guys gauged. That's two different price tags on the players, but that's basically trying to fix the same problem. So I love that, and I respect the Cavs tripling down right now. There's points in this season where Cleveland looks like they should have and could have given up, and they haven't. And I think that deserves a little bit of love. And I'm hopeful that they'll get their team healthy and give this thing a real shot before they have to make our decision in Cleveland. Going to the local team, the Dallas Mavericks. Jake Fisher says that Andrew Wiggins, PJ Washington, and Dorian Finney-Smith are all the big targets. Love them all, depending on the price, of course. Don't trade 2 firsts for Dorian Finney-Smith, for the love of God, but I would love to see him back. Andrew Wiggins, that's a high risk, high reward kind of situation there, most likely, maybe low cost. But I think that there is an interesting way to talk yourself into a Wiggins move. And then PJ Washington is probably my favorite of this group, because you might have to give up a little bit more. I love the contract. I love the player. I think it fits really well with Luka. It doesn't solve a lot of issues. He's not like the third guy, but I think that's a super high-level role player to add to what you have with Kyrie and Luka. Michael Scotto of Hoopsite talked about how Mavs have Derek Lively off limits. To that we say, as well as the Jazz rumor, duh. And then he mentioned that they were keeping their tabs with the Blazers on Jeremy Grant, but that I don't really think that that's a realistic option. I don't think I don't think the Mavs want to take that cap hit, but maybe there's enough spare parts that they could do it in the interim and worry about it later without giving up too much as far as the first round picks are concerned. He also mentioned they're looking around at the forward market, and unfortunately, Mavs fans, the only thing I have to say to that is who isn't. Moving into the Thunder, who for newsworthiness I did not put up to the top, but for basketball they didn't have a whole lot of interesting stuff. But I had to talk about this, didn't I? So why not an hour into it? Josh Giddey isn't going to be in trouble, but maybe is. TMZ got an elite lawyer, or TMZ got an elite lawyer. They probably do a great lawyer. So TMZ reported that the family of the young lady in question lawyered up quite well, and that the Newport Beach PD has closed the case officially. However, that does now leave the opportunity for the NBA to investigate, which they have announced they formally are. I think for me, I just want to say this is a win for the fans. I think that Giddey being booed in every single city in fucking America is incredible and consistent, and I'm amazed by that. I don't know if he's guilty. I don't want to play that version of the game, but I respect the fans for putting their foot down and saying, we don't like this. We don't want him playing. We want you guys to figure this out, and then maybe he can play or whatever, right? Maybe there's not rational thought with some of these fans, but I like the thought. I like the respect for the game and the brand. The money you pay for to see this, to see those guys, all that stuff. I like when we push back about things we don't like because other sports fans won't do that. And they'll just, I like it. It's part of the fabric of what the NBA is. Of course, no one has any comment. And everybody but one very notable exception, hospital, ambulance. Good luck, whoever's in there. Entire team minus one notable went to Chet Holmgren's high school jersey retirement. So good job on the PR team. Sacramento Kings. We'll have a couple conversations here about these guys. Anthony Slater of The Athletic says that Keegan Murray's untouchable status basically kills them in any trade deals. This was reported prior to Pascal being traded, and I love that because I agree. They should have been stubborn about that. He's a talented player, and I wouldn't give up on him as who he is, where he is, and where you're at with your build. Woj did say that they're still in the market for a strong defender despite losing out on Pascal. So maybe that's where the Harrison Barnes plus stuff package can come into play. I think that's a blessing in disguise because they have the chips to make good singular moderate moves, but lumping them all together for one massive deal probably feels foolish in the given market. So I kind of like it. I think the blessing in disguise that they missed out on the Pascal deal. They stood strong on what they should have done, just like Indiana. And Indiana was able to get the deal done. They weren't. Maybe there's something there, but I think with the fit, I think with the long-term stuff, I think Kings ended up getting a blessing in disguise. Even if it doesn't work this year, I think that was still saves you from a bad trade. Phoenix, not a ton to cover right now. And I think for Suns fans, that's awesome. You didn't get not mentioned in this, but you got close. There's been a viral in the Stone moment. There's been a massive comeback win in a Devin Booker 50-point game. So things are starting to be on the uptick for the Suns. Did want to mention them just because Jake Fisher says they're very active on the trade market. Again, this won't be for star players or anything, but this will be to build out the core. Mentioning PJ Tucker is a big candidate. I think my only thing is I almost don't want them to trade Grayson Allen at this point. I think that sort of fits their brand. They just need to find ways to beef up around him because they can't obviously play that way defensively moving forward. But his salary also is the most tradable. So that'll be an interesting little thing to look out for Suns fans is what they decide to do with Grayson Allen's money, as they also obviously have to fill out real existing needs. The Bucks, they came off the top ropes via Chris Haynes reporting, a.k.a. Damian Lillard texting him that the Bucks would have interest in DeJounte Murray. That comes off the top rope because you're probably thinking to yourself, how? And I'm thinking, yeah. How is the correct answer? The deal would probably send Bobby Portis out to a third team in order to get another asset. I'm not even going to break down this trade. Like it's literally possible, but it's like figuratively almost impossible. If that makes sense. I don't know. We're getting long here, so I'm just trying to let you know that deal's probably not happening, even if they're reporting it. Philadelphia, not a lot to say here because it looks like the only thing we need to talk about with the Sixers is that they're just going to run this group the way they have it. And I don't hate it. Shams said before the Pascal trade that they're not even in on Murray, LaVine, or Pascal. Fair. Then after the Pascal trade, they're not even that likely to go after Bruce Brown. So that's an interesting part. And then you have a report today or yesterday that says, hey, honestly, Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, KJ Martin, we know they're expiring contracts. We kind of like them. We kind of want them here. And with their cap space, with the two studs they have, I don't think this is a bad move for Philadelphia. I mean, I think it's tough to palate for Philadelphia fans because you're essentially going into the offseason or you're going into the postseason saying, hey, whatever Joel and Tyrese can cobble together is what this season's going to be. it would make it sweeter if you won. But at the end of the day, that's tough. And it could be a tough pill to swallow for a franchise that has historically been very significant to basketball, but has struggled to win that title for, since 1983. So it matters to those people. And that is a rabid sports fan town. The Eagles just disappointed the shit out of them. I don't even know where the other two teams are in the order of the pecking orders of their leagues. But as it is right now, I know that Philadelphia's Joel Embiid era needs to capitalize eventually for these fans, and for them to be put off another season could be a tough sell. But at the end, it could have the best reward of basketball, and it could be them being prime position to be the next great dynasty, right? Maxi's such a talented player. Joel has evolved into an MVP. It's not out of the question. All right. Well, that's it for the teams, man. It took a while. That's why tiers has been postponed, because why the fuck would I make tiers for teams that could be trading all these guys a billion times over? I did want to finish with quick hitters, but there's just a small bit of going on. Should be 5 minutes or so. Some things I want you guys to go check out on your free time. Fab Five reunited. The Fab Five are a really awesome college hoops team from the early 90s. This is a very culturally significant team to basketball, and to the Black community in America, obviously. But really, more than anything, this was really one of those early moments in the new era of basketball culture, where people where real hype could be built, where real cultural changes that weren't even just through Black culture or through just parts of American culture. These things were blowing up worldwide. It was becoming true, unabashed basketball culture. And that's really one of the legacies of the Fab Five, kind of being one of the first, groups of young men to say, we want to play all together. We're doing this together, us against the world. We're beating the establishment, especially in a very, very still white dominated sport like college basketball was at the time. It was an interesting thing for five young Black prospects to get together, say, we're going to the same team. We're going to dress a certain type of way, and you guys are going to respect us. You guys don't even understand. It's going to be controversial, because everything was weirdly controversial back then. And I guess not weirdly. We know why. But it's weird to us now with a modern lens. Either way, going to throw a link to the Fab Five documentary ESPN did on YouTube, probably. Definitely below in the comments, so you guys can enjoy that. Piece of history. Don't have the links for you here, I don't think, but I'll search for them. Giannis has a couple of docs coming out on Amazon Prime. One, Giannis: The Marvelous Journey, that releases February 19th. And then Ugo, a homecoming story about his first trip to Nigeria, which I believe is available now on Prime. So I'll put all that in the comments there in case you guys want to poke around at that. For my history nerds, my basketball history nerds, truly my comrades in life, the two things I love the most. You have a great documentary coming out on Max about Bill Bradley, calling Rolling Along, an American story about Bill Bradley. Now, Bill Bradley is probably not the most household name in modern basketball fans, but he's a pretty cool guy historically. So to basketball, he was a stud player. One of the high pick of the Knicks, can't remember where they took him, ends up being a high-level role player for the Knicks on their super, amazing team that ended the 60s and started the 70s and won 2 championships. And so big deal for the historical part in the basketball side of things. But then as a player, he was like a Rhodes Scholar. Or as a non-player, he was went to Princeton, ended up being a senator for a long time, and then ran for president. So one of the cooler parts of NBA history. It's one of those little things in my heart that I want is just who's the next NBA player to run for president. Jaylen Brown, I'm looking at you. Next, Adam Silver, Steve Ballmer got together at the bones of the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California. That will soon be finished in August, and will officially host the 2026 All-Star Weekend. The building will also be hosting the 2028 Olympics for basketball portions. The arena, like I said, will be open in August with a little fan event. Is basically what Ballmer started talking about it. And I really wanted to bring this up because this has taken the Battle of Los Angeles into a very interesting place. I've been talking about it a little bit, but it gets crazier and crazier, more interesting as we go. Now, we know the title differences are just the history of the Los Angeles Lakers and the Clippers, two different things. I get it. But in the moment, Ballmer's doing so many interesting things while the Lakers are struggling to sort of even stay at par. Even if it doesn't matter what's happening on the court with the rosters, just as franchises. And I think that's why it's important. So in prior years, the Lakers and the Clippers would have co-hosted All-Star Weekend. This time, crypto opted out altogether, and we don't even know where the Lakers' involvement will be. It's Adam Silver basically said it was up in the air. And then, of course, it's funny because it's the Clippers, so that there was a situation where the local community had to deal with them to sponsor the team, but then now that team is being, or that sponsorship is being looked at by like federal trade commissions and stuff for misleading customers. So I just wanted to know, even in this amazing moment where this beautiful mecca of basketball will be put into Inglewood, California, right next to the historic Forum, which will play a part in All-Star Weekend, apparently. All of these amazing things. And you have this hilarious little Clipper moment out of it. But really, this is LA our way, a new arena, being in Inglewood, being really a basketball mecca, a place where Steve Ballmer is going to try his damnedest to like police people into being diehard fans in LA of all places too, which even if you're a Laker, like running the Lakers, that's still a tough thing to do. But either way, just a fun one to mention there. We will continue to enjoy this as the Lakers try to keep up both on the court and off of it. Team USA, they're going to be announcing the 30-man roster soon. This isn't really that interesting, besides the fact that this is just the beginning of getting the ball rolling on the process of deciding the final roster. And I bring that up because this could be potentially, we're all hyped about it, but we don't know. This could be potentially the greatest Team USA roster of all time, coming short in FIBA a couple of years in a row now. Or a couple of tournaments in a row now, I think has started to get to some people. There's also this little window of opportunity for LeBron, Steph, KD, and then some of the younger guys to join forces in a way that won't happen again. So I hope it happens, but we'll see. This, like I said, just getting started on that. And then finally, Amazon has partnered with Diamond Sports and could potentially be ending the nightmare for most local fans not being able to watch their favorite teams, basketball, football, or basketball, hockey, and baseball. It's still a little in limbo on who's getting what the prices are, but essentially it seems like the goal is for Amazon to be distributing your regularly scheduled local broadcast, but on their platform. We'll update when we actually know the complete details, if anyone's exempt, not, whatever. But for the Mavs fans, the local people here, it's interesting to note that Mark Cuban took less money so that 10 of the last 41 games the Mavs are going to have this season will air on local TV, WFFA, because I guess Cuban just wanted to try this out. I don't know. As we move into the new marketing, the new TV rights stuff, I'm sure there's a lot of just exploration and maybe even a little bit of just band-aiding until the bigger package comes down the line. But even with his specific comments about the question marks of sports and how people consume it moving forward, I thought it was very notable. Whew, sorry. An hour 30 wasn't the goal, but there's a lot. It took me like 3 hours to go through all of Hoops hype and be like, all right, this all happened, 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 and then try to it is a busy time of the year, folks. So please enjoy the basketball you have. Take it all with a grain of salt, because we don't know what everything's going to be. Thankfully, I'm done with these fucking construction trucks. And thank you guys for watching again. Like it, share it, subscribe it, comment it, whatever you can. If you want to be a deer and create a bot farm for us, spam some shit, get us just generating. I don't know. Hey, all the greats probably used a bot farm at some point. Why not us? That's all I'm saying. Why not us?